At times, nature reveals mercy beneath its brutality. Shark attacks are often fatal, their violence leaving little room for survival. But for Peter Smith, the outcome was different. Against the odds, he lived to tell the tale. Join us as we explore how Peter Smith survived a terrifying encounter with a shark during what was meant to be a peaceful vacation. The turquoise waters of Courland Bay shimmered under the April sun, casting a brilliant glow over the northern coast of Tobago. Gentle waves lapped rhythmically against the golden sand, their sound soothing and hypnotic. It was a scene straight from a travel brochure, the kind that drew people from across the world to this quiet Caribbean island in search of peace and paradise. Among the sunbathers and swimmers was Peter Smith, a 64-year-old British tourist from Berkhamsted, Hertfordshire, who had come to Tobago with his wife Jo and 4 close friends to celebrate the spring. For Peter and Jo, this trip was more than just a vacation. It was a long overdue escape. After months of dreary English weather and the monotony of routine, Tobago offered a sun-drenched sanctuary. The group had chosen the Starfish Hotel on Courland Bay, drawn by its beachfront access and reputation for tranquility. They had spent the previous days exploring the island's lush rainforests, sampling local dishes at seaside restaurants, and lounging beneath the shade of palm trees, letting the Caribbean rhythm slow their pace. With their departure looming near, they decided to spend one last leisurely day at the beach. Around 10 a.m., Peter waded into the warm shallows just beyond the soft curve of the shoreline. The water was as clear as glass, its pale turquoise deepening in color further out. He stood about 10 meters from shore, waist deep, laughing and chatting with his friends as they cooled off under the growing heat of the sun. The sand beneath their feet was soft, the current gentle. It felt safe, innocent even. On the beach, Jo reclined under a sun umbrella, watching her husband with a fond smile, her straw hat tilted against the glare. The cool drink sweated in her hand. For a moment, everything felt perfect. But under the surface, something stirred. Unseen by the swimmers, a shadow moved silently through the shallows. It was large, fast, and deliberate. It was a bull shark. The shark, later estimated to be 8 to 10 feet in length, had slipped into the bay undetected. Bull sharks are infamous for their aggressive nature and their ability to thrive in both salt and freshwater, often venturing into shallower coastal areas. Though uncommon, attacks in this region weren't unheard of, but few could have predicted such violence in the serene waters of Courland Bay. Without warning, the shark struck. A blood-curdling scream ripped through the air. It was Peter. In an instant, the idyllic scene turned to chaos. The shark's jaws had clamped down on his left arm with ferocious power. Blood burst into the clear water like ink, swirling and blooming outward. Peter's face twisted in agony, his body thrashing as he tried to pull away. His friends, frozen for a heartbeat, stared in horror before instinct surged forward. 2 of them lunged toward him, driven by sheer desperation, striking the water with their fists and feet in a frenzied attempt to drive the shark away. They shouted, cursed, fought like men possessed. On the beach, Jo dropped her drink. The glass hit the sand and rolled away unnoticed. She rose to her feet, her face pale beneath her sun hat, hands trembling as she took a few steps toward the water, screaming her husband's name, although her voice was drowned out by the rising panic. The shark wasn't finished. In a violent second pass, it tore into Peter's left leg and abdomen, its teeth leaving jagged, cavernous wounds. Peter's right hand flew up in a futile effort to protect himself, but was caught in the assault, suffering devastating damage. The water, once crystal clear, had become a churning cloud of red. One of Peter's friends grabbed his remaining good arm and began dragging him back toward the beach while the others continued kicking at the predator. Whether by chance or because the shark had done enough damage, it suddenly retreated into the deeper water and disappeared without a trace. Limp, gasping, and nearly unconscious, Peter was pulled ashore. His body was a ruin of torn flesh and exposed bone. The sand beneath him was quickly stained red as bystanders rushed forward, some with towels, others with nothing but bare hands, trying to staunch the bleeding. Jo collapsed beside him, clutching his hand, her tears falling fast. Calls were made in frantic bursts. A staff member from the hotel radioed for help, while others gathered around, trying to keep Peter conscious. Among them was Orion Jakarov, the water sports manager at the Starfish Resort. He had seen the chaos unfold from the dock where he was preparing kayaks. An ambulance arrived swiftly, cutting across the winding coastal roads to reach the resort within minutes. Paramedics stabilized Peter on the beach as best they could before rushing him to Scarborough General Hospital, Tobago's main medical facility. Every second mattered. At the hospital, the emergency room buzzed with urgency. White coats blurred past as Peter was rushed through triage and straight into surgery. His blood pressure was dangerously low, and he had already lost a significant amount of blood. The trauma team acted fast, assessing the full extent of his injuries. The left hand had been severed below the elbow, too far gone to save. His thigh wounds required immediate reconstructive surgery to prevent massive hemorrhaging. The abdominal punctures threatened internal bleeding. His right hand, although salvageable, would likely never regain full function. Surgeons worked for hours, piecing together what they could. They irrigated the wounds, removed damaged tissue, and performed emergency grafts. Several of Peter's fingers were reattached, though doctors warned that recovery would be long and uncertain. His vitals eventually stabilized, but he remained in critical condition overnight, kept under close observation in the intensive care unit. Against the odds, Peter survived. By morning, word of the attack had spread. Courland Bay was temporarily closed, and marine patrols were dispatched to monitor the waters. Shark sightings near popular beaches were rare, but now they couldn't be ignored. The local community was stunned, including Mr. Jakarov, who was a professional. Visitors who had spent the week basking in the calm beauty of Tobago suddenly saw the ocean in a new light, not just as a place of peace, but one of potential peril. Peter remained in the hospital for several days, undergoing multiple surgeries. Jo stayed by his side throughout, her hands never far from his. Always the steady one in their marriage, she had long been the calm counterbalance to Peter's boundless energy and adventuring spirit. Now she gripped his uninjured hand with unwavering determination, whispering words of encouragement as he floated in and out of consciousness beneath the haze of strong medication. Their friends visited daily, grappling with the trauma of what they had witnessed. The group, once united in celebration, now moved through their final days on the island in quiet disbelief. Machines beeped softly around them, tracking each fragile heartbeat and breath. Tubes snaked from his body, and bandages covered much of what remained of his limbs. News of the attack spread rapidly across the island and beyond. The shock of it reverberated through Tobago's close-knit community, reaching all corners of the Caribbean and then overseas. International headlines even picked up the story. The Office of the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly quickly issued a public response. On its social media page, it confirmed that its staff had recently interacted with Peter Smith just months earlier during the World Travel Market in London. The irony of it, promoting Tobago as a safe and welcoming destination, only to suffer such a tragedy there, was not lost on anyone. In a shared video, recorded before the attack but now circulating widely, Peter spoke of his love for the island. He described how he and a group of 16 friends had explored everything Tobago had to offer: golf, fishing, swimming, and the slow joys of island life. In response, the island moved quickly. Authorities ordered the closure of 7 other beaches in all coastal areas stretching from the town of Plymouth to Store Bay, a stretch of about 7 miles. This zone included the beloved Bucku Reef, one of Tobago's largest coral reef systems, and a magnet for snorkelers and divers. Drone surveillance was launched over the coast, and anyone operating boats was urged to avoid the area or proceed with extreme caution. Officials stressed that the closures were precautionary and would remain in place. In an effort to neutralize the threat, a $10,000 bounty was placed on the capture and relocation of the shark. However, it was retracted later on. Shark attacks in Tobago were almost unheard of. According to data from the International Shark Attack File, Most shark attacks in the region occur further north, near the Bahamas or the southeastern coast of the United States. In the past 2 decades, only 2 recorded shark attacks had occurred this far south in the Caribbean, and none within 200 miles of Tobago itself. Statistically, such events were rare. In 2023, there were just 69 unprovoked shark attacks worldwide, along with 22 provoked bites and 14 fatalities. Still, fear had a way of gripping the imagination far more tightly than facts. Tourists hesitated near the water's edge. Beachfront vendors saw business stall. Locals whispered about the suddenness of it all, how a paradise so tranquil could so quickly become a scene of horror. Back in the hospital, Peter remained in intensive care, but signs of recovery were beginning to show, and after a while, he was transported to Miami to recuperate. Though his body was battered, each breath carried a quiet promise. He had been given another chance at life, and this time he wouldn't waste it. Be sure to like and subscribe as we have more heart-wrenching stories coming.